Thank you. Yes, I did just spill coffee everywhere. Apologies. Hello, everybody. I'm Jared Staley. I use the He series. I work for the City of Cambridge in the Community Development Department. Specifically, I'm an economic development specialist. Part of the reason why I'm here is I come from a long background of planning, and previous to my work with the City of Cambridge, I was a cultural planner, where I worked to secure cultural space in physical buildings. So I worked with developers, worked with planners, et cetera, really to provide opportunities for arts and culture users. And more recently, I kind of build this bridge between what we think of as traditional economic development and arts and culture. So really that kind of like nightlife, entertainment, individual artists who may not consider themselves a part of the economic development community, et cetera. That is kind of where my sweet spot is currently.
Sorry, chair shuffling, going backwards. I'm actually the newest person here, I think. I'm Michael Busack. I'm the executive director of Club Passim in Harvard Square. Amazing organization in a basement not unlike this. We've been around about 67 years in the heart of Cambridge Square. We're a legendary listening room where folks like Joan Baez and Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and Tracy Chapman and the list goes on got some of their start. We are currently in the midst of transformation, trying to figure out what the next 70 plus years will look like for us. We are in an inaccessible space and a space that is quite small, about 110 seats, and we're kind of maxed out at what we can do. And we're also facing the very challenging grant funding landscape that many other nonprofits in this community are facing. So it's an interesting time to be a part of this panel.
Hi, I'm Christine. I am from the Comedy Studio. And on behalf of the studio, I'd just like to thank Katie and everyone at Cambridge Local First for putting on this symposium. We can give them a round of applause. So my background is really more in bar and hospitality, which is how I started with the studio, and have since taken on the membership and events program as well. So in conjunction with the ethos of the studio being a place for not only the comedy community, but our Cambridge community, we are here trying to offer this room for things such as this, fundraisers especially, and any kind of performing arts events.
Thank you. Hi, my name is JJ Gonson. I come from 40 years of rock and roll. It's funny because when I put on shows, a lot of times the bands say, move forward, move forward. And I'm really understanding that now. I'm looking at 2 rows of empty seats, and I can't see you guys back there because of the lights. If anyone wants to move forward, I invite you to do so. I owned and operated a venue in Somerville for 7 years. It was called Once. Up on Highland Ave. It closed because of the pandemic, and at that time I thought it would be easy to find a new space. I closed it for financial safety. In that time, as a lot of you know, the developers came in and ate up the kinds of properties where you could put a venue, so I have not been able to secure a new space. I apologize, a lot of people really wanted me to do it. I have a lot of history in booking bands and discovering new acts and helping to promote them. And I have tried to continue to do that in other people's spaces. Maybe we can do a show here. All right, that'd be cool.
Done. That's what the panel is for. This one right here. Yeah, perfect.
Hi, my name is Najee Brown. I'm the Artistic Director of the Multicultural Arts Center, located in East Cambridge. How many of you guys ever been there before? Okay, just a few hands. We got to fix that. We're a theater and a gallery, and I was artistic director. I'm actually co-directors with Adria. You're going to hear from her in a second. I get to decide what programming happens at the center. We curate programs ourselves, which everything from Indian classical dance to ballet to opera to musical theater to hip-hop, dance battles, which is my favorite stuff. And and the gallery is always just beautiful art. So definitely come by. I think that's all I have to say.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. Thank you to Katie and the team for organizing. I'm Adria Katz, Managing Director of the Multicultural Arts Center. So, yeah, as you heard from Najee, theater and gallery space, we're a nonprofit, so similar to the experiences of the folks at Club Passim, you know, we face challenges on the fundraising side, and I think we're also going to talk today about you know, ticket sales and earned revenue and how we balance that given the fact that we want to fund arts and we want to support our artists and make sure that they profit and can live and can thrive. So yeah, I think my brain really comes to the Multicultural Arts Center more from a finance and operations background, so I'm excited to have that conversation with y'all today.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry that I'm perched behind you like some sort of you know, Freudian analyst back here. I just sort of wanted, so the theme of this panel, the subtitle is Why Arts and Entertainment Are Essential to a Thriving Local Economy. So I guess my first question is particularly centered on those of you who have spaces, and then we'll talk about those of us who do not. But if you have an actual physical space, can you talk a little bit towards the general economic ecosystem? We keep using that word today, so let's bring it back in. The ecosystem and how it is beneficial to have organizations like yourselves within them and what you guys bring to these communities.
Starting with the new guy again. I've only been here for 2 months, so bear with me. I think that it's vital for a community to have a thriving arts organization with a space like this because, you know, we are putting on 400 concerts a year for our venue, 360 nights a year, and that's bringing in folks from in town and highlighting them, but it's also bringing folks from out of town and really highlighting them and giving them a space to bring their fans into the community. So many of our folks are members, but about 80% of our folks are coming from out of town, and they're bringing with them their wallets and hopefully spending in the community around us. We offer concessions at our shows, but most folks, I think, will go and grab a bite to eat before and after, and that's more money that they're spending. They're traveling into Harvard Square. That might be their one date night in a long time, and they're going to use that to go shopping and really invest in the community. I also think that we, through our mission, are able to really echo what we just heard in the last panel, the importance of equity. And like through our mission, we really have centered equity and belonging, and that's an important part of what we do. So we're putting artists that might not have a stage elsewhere. And I think that's an important thing for our communities to be really proud of. And so, you know, I think we add a ton to what is out there and what is special about what Cambridge has to offer.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Here. There you go. Reach around.
Thank you, and I agree. I think that having a space open for artists, because we all know it's a hustle these days. It's hard to make a living solely on your art, and making it kind of a responsibility of the community to provide that space. Not just for people who have kind of ascended and can make a living that way, but for people who are trying to, you know, like kind of fostering a community of people who know that this is a safe space and it's a place to try things and a place to feel included. I think the arts really are the way that communities are built. I think it's also very important that, and again, part of the many wonderful things about the studio is that they really take equity very seriously and making sure that we have different kinds of programming so that everyone has a chance to get on the mic or perform.
Thanks. One of the things that I've done during the pandemic, I worked with an organization called NEVA, which stands for the National Independent Venue Association. NEVA did a lot of research at the time about the impact of venues on the community financially. I'm embarrassed to say that our most recent report is going to come out on the 25th, so I don't have it, which is really unfortunate. But back in the day, what they decided was that $7, for every dollar spent at a venue, $7 are spent in the community. That can be in restaurants, it could be in stores, as you were saying. It can be in hotels for people who travel out of town. But it is a really important amount. I can tell you that up on Highland Ave, when I had once, that it really hurt Highland Kitchen and the places around me when we closed. There's no question they took a huge hit. They still feel it. People would come in, they would have a drink and dinner before the show, they would go have a drink after the show, they would take an Uber to get there. There was a little store next door that sold home goods that definitely felt it when we closed. Down the street there were cafes. I think that's really important, but also I think that the social equity is huge. I hear all the time from people that they miss the venue. There's very few venues at this point. We're a major city. You look at other major cities, they have way more performance places than we do. The cost to operate here is so high that it is prohibitive. As you're saying, I think we'll get to this, but you absolutely cannot survive on ticket revenue. There is no way to do that. You have to have other sources, whether you're a nonprofit, getting grants, hopefully. We survived by being a catering company in addition to a venue. The catering company absolutely floated the venue. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what that NEVA report says now about the impact, the economic impact of venues on the community. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to send you that information in a week.
So I grew up in the tradition of the Black church in Brooklyn, New York, and the church that I grew up in, even though I'm not very religious anymore, it had 5,000 seats, and it was put in the center of East New York, Brooklyn, which was historically like one of the worst neighborhoods in New York City, one of the worst neighborhoods in the country. And I watched what that church, being there, working there, did for the community. It exposed us to so many different arts and the type of events that they would have outside in the parking lot. And just for a lot of us growing up in the church, a lot of the young folks, a lot of us went on to, some of them have been pop stars, singing on Broadway. And mind you, we all came from a very dangerous, bad neighborhood, but a lot of us have gone on to do really successful and beautiful things simply because of that building being in that neighborhood at the right time. And I kind of run the Multicultural Arts Center with the same spirit of basically creating that third place, that church-like atmosphere, without the religion, but where people can come and see things that they normally wouldn't see in their community, especially because we are one of the organizations that diversity is in our mission statement. So we have the opportunity to expose people to different types of art, but also the opportunity to allow people to see themselves in places that they normally wouldn't see themselves in. And that right there is so important. For me, it's been my mission at the Multicultural Arts Center to give the center back to the people, especially since I'm not from here. I've only been here for 2 years, but give the center back to the people who maybe felt like, because, if you've been, it's so beautiful, but who may have felt like the center wasn't for them. It was too beautiful for them to feel like it was a place for that they would belong in. And it's been my mission of just bringing those people in and saying, we are here for you. This place is for you. Spend as long as you want. If you need to work, just come in the kitchen and just be here while we're working. It doesn't matter. Come and sit in my office and feel like you belong in a place like this, because you do.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things. I think I've noticed, and I think we can all kind of see, that there is movement towards the way that people want to spend their money is on something that is impactful, that is experiential, that is like transformative, and away from that consumerism. I think there's trends of that, really on really high scales. People really wanting to not waste as much and to not spend as much on something that's going to be ephemeral. Although the arts can be ephemeral, but they can be transformative, and so that can have a lasting impact. So I think it's sort of like an opportunity really to capitalize, so to speak, on that interest of spending and investing in being together, being with one another, being inspired, or having our minds changed, or having our hearts opened. So I think I think that's a huge impact on our local economy, to give people that place to be together. I think also, you asked the question about venues, people who have spaces. The Multicultural Arts Center is really fortunate to have a very long lease on a space. We do have to pay rent, but the space is at a premium in East Cambridge, especially in our neighborhood. It is transforming. And so there's a way for us to be working in conjunction with our neighbors, HubSpot, Car Gurus right there, like these big names, and Google is down the street, to be working in conjunction to provide the places for those workers, those people who make use of those businesses, to come together and be together and share, like you were saying, JJ, get a drink together afterwards, or whatever the case may be, to just really build the ecosystem back, because there's so much isolation right now, so much, especially I think this city really struggles with like getting out there and doing stuff. And so we're really vital. I think our role is to inspire and revitalize that post-pandemic, that energy around finding connection in person.
Fabulous. Thank you all. Jared, I did not mean to be rude and just skip you like that, so I'm actually going to direct this next question straight at you. But I think there's a general awareness that arts organizations provide, if you're going to a place like Harvard Square for retail or for a restaurant, that is a sort of single-serving customer right there. How do you engage this space as more of a community? I think you require these arts organizations to provide a reason to have something to do in these places. And Harvard Square used to be, when I first arrived here, 2001, this was an absolute mecca of street performance and people out everywhere, and everybody was engaging with each other. And then these stupid little crack machines come out in 2006, 2007. That is when the iPhone comes out. Instagram instantly, right? Every 30 seconds, I can get the same dopamine hit that I got from one good play, and I didn't know if it was going to be good or not, and was a musician good or not, all this stuff. Here's what I want to ask you, Jared, is on behalf of the city and other small businesses, we live in a place now where I used to pay $600 in rent, which meant that I could live as an artist, and then I had to transform myself and start to figure out other ways of becoming, a small businessman so that I could actually survive. What would you recommend to small businesses, particularly small business owners in this room, for community engagement around the arts, and how do you think the city of Cambridge is helping to provide opportunities for development for the arts and other small businesses?
That's a very big question. So I think, creating these experiences, everybody has said, is incredibly important. When I'm looking at businesses, retailers, et cetera, who have survived through the pandemic, who are continuing to survive, they may be providing goods, but they're also providing these opportunities to come in and congregate, learn something new, experience something together. And, as much as these large venues, this is a small venue in the grand scheme of things, but these bigger spaces, they take on a lot of overhead costs, et cetera. You can do a lot as a small business owner in a small space, and that intimacy is something that, I think people are craving across the board. In terms of how the city and other government entities can support this, one, don't take away our funding. Two, fund businesses and organizations that are helping. And, we're limited in the way that we can support and fund, just given restrictions from either the federal government or just how municipal government works in Massachusetts. But there are these opportunities. And then beyond funding, we can streamline the permitting process. We can reduce barriers that exist in zoning. We can simplify zoning. I'm sure many of you are unaware of what zoning is and how that impacts you. That's where I come in and our team comes in. We can really help navigate that. But really just allowing things to exist is sometimes the biggest barrier that exists. And that's where, the city can really play a part. The last thing that I'll say is there are times when the city needs to know and when I need to know that it is not my place to get involved. When I get involved, things get much more complicated, et cetera. And so there is a fine balance of the city participating, defining, et cetera, and really just taking a step back and allowing things to organically happen and being okay with that.
Fabio, you can keep that for a second because I'm going to go back through the rows here, but thank you for that. Lovely answer.
Add something? I'm sorry.
Please do.
I just want to jump in to say that the City of Cambridge is producing two grant-making programs. One's Cambridge Plays and one is Cambridge Nights. Both of those are basically the city giving money to produce events, like fast-lining the permitting and so there's money involved, there's licensing involved, and there's permitting involved, and the city takes care of it. So I think that we have a great roadmap for how that can be done. They're activating them during the summer, so that's really cool, right around the change of the fiscal year. So I think it works out nicely. But it's a step in the right direction for what can be done, I think, the rest of the year, too. I think a big thing that the city does need to look at and is looking at is the anti-aid amendment, which limits how nonprofits can receive funding from the city of Cambridge. So that's something that's been on the books for a long time, and the charter is being reviewed, so we can just all stay involved, I think, as advocates for the arts and for the nonprofit sector to look at how to continue the work of things like Cambridge Plays and Cambridge Nights, and also investigate the anti-aid amendment if we still want it the way that it is. We all have a voice in the city of Cambridge's legislature. So,
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Adria. My next question is just regarding, so we met as a sort of pre-panel to see what we would chat about today. And one of the things that was really prevalent to me is the challenges right now of running an arts organization when they are slightly under attack. There's certainly a lot of federal money that has just sort of evaporated right now. People are left waving in the wind. The squeeze economically on others means that the donor bases are falling, which means everybody's applying for the same grants, which means they're very, very competitive right now. Ticket sales might only provide 10% of our revenue, of our operating budget. What would you folks say are the greatest challenges, right? Whether it's accessibility or attendance right now in a world of smartphones when people go, oh, I can get my entertainment from this thing and I never have to leave my house. So what are the greatest challenges, and what would you say to the other small business owners in this room we can do to prop each other up as a community right now? Let's begin with Michael.
Well, you nailed the challenges quite a bit. So I think that's it, right? So PASIM, for us, for example, we really prioritize a couple of things in our mission. We prioritize supporting artists at all stages of their life cycle, and that means for us that we pay most of our artists much higher than other venues. So we pay them 75% of what our ticket sales are. That leaves our margins really, really narrow in terms of what earned revenue. And as I said earlier, we're doing 400 shows a year. We're sort of maxed out in terms of what we can do in terms of earned revenue in the space. And so that leaves us with grant funding. At the same time, we really prioritize diversity in our mission. We want to, as a core tenet of our mission, and we always have, increase the amount of voices in folk music, which is traditionally has, what do you picture when you think about folk music? Exactly. So, we're really prioritizing making sure that every voice is at the table because folk music means belonging to the people at its core definition. But that, in this moment, as you talked about, federal funding is drying up. We don't directly receive federal funding, but we do receive state funding that trickles down from federal funding. And that's a challenge for us. I think the ways that we're thinking about it, though, is because that's core to our mission, it's also core to us that we are providing a safe space, and we're making sure that we are leading by example and making sure that everybody feels like they have a home at PASIM. So we're leaning in this moment. We're making sure that we're talking about it. We're not just saying that we're celebrating Pride Month. We're actually showing in our values what we do to celebrate Pride every day. And I think, hopefully, that investment will lead to individual donors. There's this wacky term called revenge giving right now, which I kind of love. But there are folks who are saying, we're not going to stand for this shit. And we are going to step in and save the things that we love. And we've noticed kind of a bump in that, but we need it in this moment. At the same time, we are not an accessible space either, but we're a historic space. And so people who have been coming for 40, 50 years, some of them now have disabilities and they can't get into the space. And we prioritize accessibility again in our mission. So for us, we're trying to figure out how we can evolve, but we don't have the money to actually invest in our space that we don't own to be able to become accessible. So we're going to rely on grants that are disappearing. So did I answer both of your questions?
So what can other small business owners as a community at large do to help you, and what are you doing? How are we in this together?
I think sponsors, both participation and sponsorship. For some businesses, I'm sure we all come to local businesses and ask for the $50, $100 sponsorship for our programs, and that might seem meaningless or like you're getting hit from every end, but I think it's important from a value standpoint to come forward and say that you actually value these organizations and you would be sad if they disappeared. And that money is important to make sure that programs continue going. And then I think just participating, finding ways that if you are having some sort of promotion, work with a nonprofit that can help boost both of your traffic. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of the challenges, funding definitely being one of them. I'm feeling that squeeze, running Cambridge Nights and just seeing the overwhelming response to that as a first-time grant program, and then realizing we have limited funds and we can only fund a certain number of organizations and businesses. That's a really tough decision to make, and I think we're exploring how else we can make up for that funding as we foresee losing a lot of it across the board. I think in terms of small businesses collaborating together, I guess that is the key, is that collaboration. And maybe you're a restaurant that's really never collaborated with the Comedy Studio or another venue in town. What deals can you make? Is there a 10% off for going to this place? If you're a retailer, is there an opportunity to bring in a couple artists to show off their work, show off their skills, and train somebody else on, or even just a fun hobby? Is there a partnership between galleries and bars, restaurants, liquor stores, et cetera, or really anything? And I think this is the time where collaboration is going to be key. Because there is limited funding, and when I'm looking at grant proposals and responses, I am taking into collaboration into consideration, because that is, if my dollars can help more than one business, I want to do that. So I think that's incredibly important, and I hope to see more of that in the future.
Yeah, you covered it. I mean, I think by virtue of the fact that you all are here, we know the importance of collaborating with our neighbors in our community. So on that note, I do think that, grants are important, fundraising is important, but I think from a grassroots level, really kind of enmeshing yourself in your community will help keep everyone afloat, rising tides and all. We're partnering with Nicole at the Williams Agency to do like a hot sauce challenge with comics. We've raised funds for many of the local area businesses. I think that just being open to any and all ideas, we'll make a fit. Even if it's just the room that you want to rent, we can do that. But if it's something that we can collaborate with and add comedy and add artists into it, like that's something that I think is of value and doesn't cost much. Just takes a little bit of time and effort, and then again, I know that money's tight and funding is non-existent. Yeah. But I can't stress enough the importance that we place on making this a room where anyone is welcome. and keeping ticket prices low and, fundraising events accessible is still important to our ethos.
Thank you. Here, I'm going to give you this one, JJ, but you just reminded me that there is that whole free marketing thing in the version of social media that when you bring in artists to your organizations, it's a great way to collaborate. Everybody gets a lot more attention. And if you've ever tried to post something on the internet which is just like, hey, look, we've got this promotion going today, you don't get very much engagement. But when you post content or something for people to actually watch, comedy or music or cultural events, then suddenly there is that engagement that you may not have seen previously.
No, it's great. I think it bears repeating that we have a real space issue, and while it's very nice to say that there's these collaborations going on, there's so few businesses. I can't tell you, I wish I could tell you exactly how many art galleries there are in Cambridge. I think it's 2. Yeah, 2. 3? Okay, well, we call ourselves an arts-based community. We don't have galleries to speak of. We have very few venues, and when you look at areas like, let's just pick Austin, Texas. There's all these venues, they're all in the same neighborhood. They have this critical community where if you're in that neighborhood, you're walking by, you see the poster for another show, maybe you go to more than one in a day. We don't have that here. We don't have that cross-pollination going on just by dearth of there being venues in the same area. We just don't have venues. You can count them on one hand. And we call ourselves an arts community, but at the end of the day, the property is just too expensive for arts. I think that there is a lot to be said for a membership model. I think a membership model can be very successful. Getting people to invest in that way, to bring their dollars to the table in a bigger way all at once, I think can be helpful. But again, there really isn't a sustainability just with ticket sales. So we have to look beyond the ticket sale as a way to support live music. I don't know how galleries, they don't survive, right? We don't have any. So I don't know how a gallery can survive in Cambridge. The rents are just too high. Looking for the support of a kind landlord, but they have to pay for their taxes too. The reality is that most musicians, and of course I come from a music perspective, some comedy, but mostly music, we go to a venue and we say, give us a deal, and the venue says, we'd love to give you a deal, but we can't survive if we give you a deal. Most of the kinds of shows I promote, these bands are lucky if 20 people come out to see them. So there's not enough revenue there for the venue to be able to say, yeah, we'd love to cut you a deal, for the bands to be able to afford these opportunities. I would love to see more funding, but we all know what's going on with that. So I think that it really is a bigger question of how do we find enough support behind the artists to then make it possible for the venues to survive. I can't come to you and say, hey, can I have the room for free? I will. But at the end of the day, I know that that's not sustainable for you. Maybe once, but it's not sustainable for you. I do see some of the bigger venues, I'm thinking not in Cambridge, but Crystal Ballroom actually does a bar guarantee. So you can go into the room, at least you can get into the room. If you don't hit their minimum, you do have to pay the difference. But at least some of that is being offset by the client, by the customer.
I'm a huge fan of that model, by the way, because then everybody makes money, right? The bar is making money. The artist doesn't have to pay that extra rent. There are places, the Oberon, I used to run Shitface Shakespeare in there, and it was a $2,500 bar minimum for a 2-hour rental of the place, which meant you better drink, you know what I mean? But we met it often, which meant they made money, we made our money, we had to pay no rent, and it was just a really nice symbiotic relationship.
I guess I'll just add, I think a lot has already been said towards this question, but it is fundamentally like we don't do it for the money, I think, most of us and most artists. So it's just not profitable, and this is an extremely expensive city. And there's just no way around that except to just say, you know, all of you guys in the audience, we have pay what you wish tickets. Think about paying more if you can pay more so that people can come, so that it can be an accessible place. So, you know, I think it comes back to us like trying to dismantle capitalism again and just being like, we're doing it for the love of the art and the being together, and we're doing it in a capitalist society, and we do need to make ends meet. And so, like, how can we all pick up a little bit of that slack? I think that's all I can say.
I actually want to add something. Okay, cool. I think it's England has set up a system where a small portion of their athletic dollars go to the arts. I would love to see something like that. I know we don't have sports teams in Cambridge, but we do in Boston. Boston does consider us all to be part of the community. And honestly, if the Red Sox gave 25 cents a ticket to the arts in Boston, like a really small amount of money, it would be hugely impactful.
Well, the Red Sox has a foundation, and they determine how they want to put that money. So it's tricky because it's not going through something that's like an impartial regulatory body. We have a system of philanthropy in this country where we ask those with immense privilege to like shell out where they feel it's best suited. So I like your idea better.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have hit the moment in our program here where we're supposed to have questions, but I've also hit the end of this time for this panel, and I do not keep people from lunch. That is like rule number one of all events, and I'm not going to. I will suggest that if you have any questions for any of the people on this panel, that you encounter them at Wusong Road, which we will all head down to after a sing-along by Jenny Bonham Carter in just a moment. I just wanted to summarize a little bit how much I appreciate. Thank you, Katie Labrie, by the way, for setting all of this up. Thank you, Kieran, for organizing.